This is the double Fisherperson's knot. It's useful for joining two pieces of rope together, ideally of the same diameter, or for closing the loop on a single piece of rope, which is what we're going to be doing now. So take your two strands, lay them out parallel to one another, and then we're going to start with this one. I'm going to start by wrapping it up over this way, over the other one. Remember that the direction we went on this one was up first. We're going to wrap it around once, and notice that when I wrapped it back over itself. Not up this way, but back this way. I'm going to wrap it one more time, and then you'll notice that there's a hole that we can then pass the rope back through right here. So we're going to pass it through and cinch it down. Now, if you remember with this strand, we looped it up that way. So with this one, we're going to loop it down the other way. Remember, we cross back over the rope. And then through again. And if you did the loops in opposite directions, you'll notice that the knot will actually nestle together quite nicely. These two pieces will fall in together and align. Now with the double Fisherperson's knot, you always make sure that you have enough tail to go back over the knot with both sides. It's a good idea to set the knot, pull on it really hard to make sure that it's not going to come undone.
I'm General Manager of Lake Wiley Marina, and I'm going to show you how to do two knots. One is tying a boat to a cleat on a dock, and the other one is tying a bowline knot. All right, today we're going to demonstrate how to tie a bowline, one of the best knots to use in boating, and several reasons for that, but for starters, to show you how to do it, make a little loop. One way to remember it is the rabbit comes out of the hole, goes under the log, and climbs back in the hole. Now, that knot, as tight as it gets, won't ever bind up. And to loosen the knot, just pull back on that, and the knot comes undone. So no matter how much tension you put on it, it'll hold. One more time. Reverse under, out of the hole, under the log, and back in the hole. And there we go. That's a bowline. Okay. Alright, I'm going to show you how to easily tie a boat up to a cleat on the dock. And it's not like this and this and that'll hold. But when it comes time to leave, there's a lot of doing and undoing trying to get the rope off the cleat. So go around the cleat a half a turn, make part of your figure eight, and then flip the rope over one time. That can't come loose. That's as tight as it gets. When it comes time to leave the dock, it's real simple to get it loose, and none of this tying knots back this way. That's not what we do. Show it one more time. Go around the base of the cleat, over, under, twist the rope so that the free end is underneath, and then pull back tight, and we're tight. For storm tying, you may want to put another loop in it there, but just tying up the dock for the day or for a couple hours or whatever, that's all we need to do. One more time. Around the base of the cleat, over, under, one twist, and you're tied.
Узел ананас. Значит, сплели мы турецкую голову 7×6. С нее и будем делать наш узел Pineapple. Ну, можно использовать шлейки другого цвета, можно этого же коричневого, но выбрали мы черный, чтобы нагляднее было, потому что там с коричневой будет запутаться достаточно легко, поначалу, по крайней мере. Начинаем вот с этого места, откуда мы начинали плести турецкую голову. Плести узел ананас, как бы уже доплетать. Тут узел намного легче, ничего сложного в этом нет. Под одной, над одной. И теперь перевернулась. Здесь над одной, и вот под вот этим перекрестием пойдет у нас вот здесь вот таким образом. То есть узел ананас — это узел, простой какой-нибудь турецкая голова, в который вплетен другой узел попроще, поменьше. Вот. У нас прошло вот так. Дальше над одной, под одной. Вот здесь вот пойдет. Таким вот образом. Затягивать узел не надо, потому что и так на болванке плетем. Да и проще. Здесь также над одной и под перекрестием пошло. Поначалу плести его, начало этого узла достаточно простое, ничего сложного нет. Дальше будем плести, там легко сбиться, поэтому надо повнимательней. Тем более вот первые разы достаточно не очень понятно, но потом это все понимается и плетется достаточно быстро. Здесь также так, а это мы пришли вниз, да, здесь над одной, под одной, посередине. Под вот этой. Здесь уже вот оно перекрестие наше. То есть вот шлейка и вот шлейка. Здесь пойдет под перекрестием и вот под вот этой шлейкой уже. То есть получается под тремя вот здесь. Вот таким образом пойдет. Вот. Неправильно вставили. Чуть-чуть. Но здесь также над одной, под одной. Над вот этой, под вот этой. Вот у нас уже вырисовывается помаленьку. Здесь, значит, под двумя вот этими и под вот этой. Из-под нее выходит. Что-то застряло. Вот здесь выходит. Дальше. Над одной, под одной. Здесь также под перекрестием под вот этой. Вот здесь. Таким образом. А вот здесь уже пойдет над двумя. То есть мы ее уже один раз прошли вот здесь. Вот здесь вот над двумя вот этими пойдет. Над двумя под одной. Вот так. Дальше пока так же. Вот она вышла, вот сюда мы пришли под двумя и под вот этой третьей, под тремя, под двумя коричневыми и под одной черной. Уже тудовато, но ничего страшного. Потом мы его поправим, этот узел. Более затянем. Он будет ровненький. Вот так. Дальше. Здесь тоже мы уже проходили. Черный. Здесь над двумя, над вот этими. Под одной. Под вот этой. Не вылазит. Было чуть поуже шлейку взять. Ну да ладно. Как-нибудь справимся. Здесь также под двумя коричневыми вот этими перекрестиями и под одной черной. Вот здесь уже над двумя, под двумя пойдет. Так, над вот этими двумя.
Today I'm going to show you how to tie a hook to the end of a line with a uni knot. I'm going to use some heavier line than you normally would be using for demonstration purposes. Take the end of your line, bring it up through the eye of the hook, come through the eye one more time, and try to keep that area straight so you don't have an overlapping line as you come through the eye. Then what you want to do is form an overhand loop, and you can hold all of this with your thumb. Take the tag end of your line, come through the loop and over the main line 4 or 5 times or 6 times. And then pull on both ends. And then don't pull it real tight so it'll slip. Slip it down to the eye of the hook, and then you can tighten both the knot by pulling on both ends, and then tighten it back up on the hook again. And then you can cut the tag end of your line off to whatever length you like. And there's your uni knot.
Iran obviously central to the discussion, and as some of this language gets elevated and calls for war become more numerous, there are also calls like this. This is a full-page ad in today's Washington Post. I'll go ahead and put it up on screen for you so you can see it a little closer. It's a photo of President Obama and Prime Minister Netanyahu with various quotes by top U.S. officials, the current and former secretaries of defense, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, all essentially saying that the consequences of attacking Iran are too grave, now is not the time, and a letter asking the president to resist the pressure for war with Iran. One of the signers of this letter to the president is retired Army Colonel and former Chief of Staff to Colin Powell, Lawrence Wilkerson. Colonel Wilkerson, thank you so much for being here. I guess just tell me first, what was kind of the impetus for this?
We wanted to do what little we could to give the president some political space, some maneuver room. We see the Congress now in the low teens, if not the single digits, with the American people, nonetheless using its power to paint the president into a corner, particularly congressmen like Lindsey Graham and others who were of that ilk. We wanted to let the president know that there is political space, there is room for diplomacy, there's room for economic, financial, and other actions, just as he said in his speech to AIPAC.
Let's talk about that. I mean, we have Senators Lindsey Graham, I always often group together with Senator John McCain and Joe Lieberman, often making this call.
None of whom have ever served a day on the ground in combat, I might point out.
Making this call, reminding the Americans how dangerous Iran is and the importance of standing for Israel. What is their reasoning for this?
I think it's somewhat political opportunism, because I have to admit that I can find no other focus or reason for the existence of my party today, the Republican Party, other than the political objective of getting the president out of the White House. So a lot of this is not aimed at America, her security, Israel, her security. It's aimed at the political prospects of the Republicans, who are now engaged in a circular firing squad amongst Rick Santorum and a host of other lesser lights, Mitt Romney I'd include in that, and are going to commit suicide. They're going to get so beaten so badly in the fall, and I think many of them know that they're desperate for opportunistic attacks on the president, and this is one that gives them a great deal of oomph, because it's got Israel behind it.
However, calls to attack Iran or to worry and fear Iran are not new. They've been going on for years now.
20 years or so?
Right. And I'm wondering, that's what
Clock's been running for 20 years.
I wanted to ask you, I mean, when you served under Secretary of State Colin Powell, I mean, how have things changed? Do you think, in fact, that we are closer now than ever, or are these just sort of reiterated and repeated, pieces of language that are being thrown out there?
Well, I think if you want to ascribe a strategic purpose to it, at that time we thought we had Iran contained, but we also thought we had Iraq contained. And lo and behold, the neoconservatives came along, Vice President Cheney came along, and a whole lot of people came along with a lot of words to the contrary. And before we knew it, we were at war in Iraq, and we all know the outcome of that. We would rather not see that process repeated, and this is not Iraq. This is not Iraq. This is 70+ million people who will have a national cohesiveness that Iraq never dreamed of having, especially if we attack them. And we need to consider this very, very deeply. And it's a profound problem. We can deal with it other than through military force. And as the president said, if we do have to ultimately use military force, that's way down the road. It's not anywhere imminent, and it's not, in the sense that some people are saying, existential right now.
Do you think most Americans are aware of that fact, that Iran is not, I mean, most Americans seem to be very happy that we're out of Iraq, regretting that we ever went there.
If they want to spend another $2 trillion and be engaged in another land war in Western Asia, more power to them. I don't think that's the case.
But it's more than just the money. I mean, as you say, this is a lot of people, a whole different ballgame in terms of the type of country that it is. Do you think Americans are aware?
I think the polling I've seen of late shows that if you ask the right questions, you get the right answers, or the answers that I think are more indicative. If you just say, are you in favor of taking Iran out if it gets a nuclear weapon, 52, 60% are going to say yes. But if you begin walking down all the things you need to walk down and asking them that question, you get a good 60% that says, no, let's let diplomacy, let's let other measures work out. I think that's what needs to be done. Neoconservatives don't do that. They just throw out the question, nuke weapon, Iran, existential, Israel. You got to be on our side, you know.
Yeah.
No one wants to ask the sophisticated questions. American people are more sophisticated than these people give them credit for.
Absolutely. Sometimes, though, those sound bites come out sounding so well that people just sort of latch onto it.
That's why more and more Americans turn off the damn TV.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I want to put up something. I know Iran's Supreme Leader, Ali Khamenei, gave a foreign policy speech a little more than a week ago, and I just want to put up something that he said that sort of addressed the issue of nuclear weapons. He said it before, but he said it again. He said the Iranian nation has never pursued and will never pursue nuclear weapons. There is no doubt that the decision makers in these countries opposing us know well that Iran is not after nuclear weapons. Do you think he's telling the truth?
To a certain extent, I think probably within his religious edict he is. I have grave concern about Iran, though, in that respect. Same concern I have about this country. After all, John McCain is not Barack Obama. Lindsey Graham is not Barack Obama. There's a wide divergence of power in Tehran right now. There's the IRGC increasingly taking over more and more power. There's no doubt in my mind that certain of the leaders of the Revolutionary Guard Corps would love to have a nuclear weapon. There are other elements in Iran that probably would side with that group too. So there's no, we like to say that the Ayatollah is the supreme power. It's just like any other country in that respect. There are lots of power centers in Iran. There are lots of power centers in this country too. Witness what we're seeing right now. So it's not, I don't think it's fair to say, well, the Ayatollah is sincere and then conclude that Iran's not looking for a nuclear weapon.
Makes sense. I'm wondering, when you turn on the TV, especially a lot of the mainstream channels, there's a couple different narratives out there going on. One of them is that Obama is weak when it comes to Iran, that he prefers sanctions to action. And then there's another narrative that Obama and the rest of the U.S. Congress is basically in the back pocket of Israel. Are either of those kind of more right than the other?
I hope this is the case, that the president is a very astute strategist, not just a tactician, but a strategist. He, after all, has brought my party to virtual political ruin, and they're going to realize that in November. What
do you mean that he has brought the Republican Party to that?
His attempt to reach out to them repeatedly, rebuffed by my party, has made clear to most of the Americans who are going to vote in this election that my party is not interested in good governance. My party is only interested in getting rid of the black man in the White House. And so I believe that he's engineered some of this by his very forthcomingness, his willingness to compromise and so forth. And when he clamps down, he's going to clamp down big time. And it's not going to be him clamping down, it's going to be the American people clamping down. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see a third of the Congress or more essentially thrown out in November.
It'll be interesting to see. I want to put something up on the screen. This is a graph I found that compares the military capabilities of Israel versus Iran. I think it's important to put up there. You see Iran is there in blue and Israel is in red. And when you look at tanks and aircraft and...
These are all conventional measures of might, though. And one of the things we found out, one of the things the Russians found out, the Soviets, if you will, in Afghanistan, one of the things we found out in Afghanistan and found out in Iraq, and we will find out in spades in Iran, is that conventional military power, as formidable as it may seem, is not all it's cut out to be.
So you're saying it doesn't matter that Israel outspends and outmans and out-tanks
Israel is
Iran.
surrounded by 400 million potential guerrillas. That's a very dangerous situation to be in, and it's a very dangerous situation to be in if you think that your conventional military capability is the standard by which you measure the threat.
Well, I think that that's a good point. I mean, I think it seems to me, at least, that a lot of people in Israel know that they're surrounded by these threats, and that's the reasoning that you hear time and time again for them wanting to...
The way you deal with this threat is not military force. You deal with this threat the opposite way, for example, Israel has been dealing with it within its own borders. Increasingly, Israeli Jews are ostracizing Arab Israelis. Increasingly. It is as bad as it's been since 1948. That's how you create these guerrillas. That's how you create the problem that is not conventional, but is asymmetric, that eventually will eat your lunch. Believe me, I've watched this ever since I fought in our first occasion for this in Vietnam. What's happening is nuclear weapons conventional military might and so forth are great if you can go in and do something decisively with overwhelming force, as my boss used to say, and get it done and get out. But if you have to linger, if you have to stay, the guerrillas are going to eat your lunch. And Israel is positioned in the midst of all these guerrillas, and she better start dealing with them, starting with the Palestinians.
Some really good words there. I want to switch gears just while I have you here because something happened today. Senator John McCain went to the floor of the Senate and sort of made the case for airstrikes against Syria. He basically says that providing military assistance to the opposition groups is not only necessary, but that is not enough, that foreign air power is needed as well. Talk a little bit about what you think is behind this and where this is going as far as Syria.
Well, just geographically, this is not Libya. This does not have a place from whence you can fly planes off a French aircraft carrier, for example. This is a very different problem than Libya, and I will remind your audience that Libya is anything but a success right now. In fact, it's looking worse every day. So intervening in Syria, where it truly is, I think, a civil war, with Bashar al-Assad responsible for, say, 60% of the casualties, the opposition responsible for another 40%, so there's blame on both sides in terms of humanitarian problems, needing to take care of those problems. The ICRC is in there now. They're the best people to be in there. I understand they're in homes now. That's the kind of humanitarian assistance that needs to be being rendered. But dropping bombs on who are you going to drop bombs? You're going to drop bombs on the Syrian army? The Syrian army, which is doing what it feels is its responsibility, and incidentally, very few are defecting, even though the media in this country says lots are defecting. What the opposition is doing is killing the Syrian soldiers and dragging them across the line, as it were, and saying they were defecting. That's crazy. We need to have a better analysis of what's going on, and we need to refrain from any interference that's going to exacerbate the situation. And John McCain is doing this, God bless John McCain, because he is opposed to the man in the White House. So is Lindsey Graham, so is Joe Lieberman, so are all these people who call themselves independents or Republicans and who just cannot stand the fact that President Obama is sitting in the White House and they're not.
Pretty interesting. So you don't think Senator McCain is able to get enough people on his side in terms of action in Syria?
I don't think so. I hope cooler heads prevail. I hope heads in NATO and elsewhere understand that this is not Libya. This is a very different situation. And they also understand, I hope, that what they did in Libya is not necessarily blooming like a flower.
I think it's a good point. I think a lot of people saw the death and destruction of Gaddafi and his family and said, V for victory, let's move on now.
Well, let me tell you something else. In that eastern Libya pocket of rebels that began this were the largest number of al-Qaeda in Iraq. By a factor of 5 to 1, al-Qaeda in Iraq killing our soldiers, killing our Marines, came from eastern Libya.
Very, very interesting to think about. Really appreciate you being here. Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, thanks so much.